So, this is Heritage Buster's first in-depth video. We cover a very, very big topic. I think close to an hour is the final edited version. It took multiple days, and there was an effort to try to get this released before the World Heritage Committee on the 19th. That did not happen, but we're going to try and see if we can release it as soon as possible. But if you're interested in World Heritage sites, this video may not be in the direction that you're expecting. This video is very much about how the system was created, how it functions on paper, topics such as the World Heritage List, the topics such as specific World Heritage sites, or how to get nominated. All of these things are things that we can explore later, but this video is really like a beginner's plus introduction to the World Heritage system. It assumes that you know what World Heritage is at a basic level, but you may not necessarily know how all of the international system works and how it even started or came to be. So there is an assumption that you may know what is already going on. If you don't, there's a lot of information here. And if there's anything that you wish to clarify, please let us know. And with that, we'll just begin. If you've ever been on vacation, you might have seen this symbol. This is the World Heritage emblem. There are a lot of places in the world that are designated or have been labeled as World Heritage.
The Great Wall of China is a famous monument and a World Heritage Site. Memphis and its necropolis, the Pyramids of Giza, usually well known as the Pyramids of Giza, is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and a World Heritage Site. Petra is also a World Heritage Site. The Galapagos Islands is a World Heritage Site. Sydney Opera House is a World Heritage Site. As of this video, there are 1,248 World Heritage Sites, and the list keeps growing. The list of World Heritage Sites covers many regions and many countries.
196 state parties have agreed that World Heritage is important and worth protecting. But what did they actually agree to? And what is a state party? Well, in this video, we're going to look at what World Heritage actually is, who is responsible, and how you can participate, or even if that's even possible. So very briefly, what qualifies me to speak on any of this? In short, my name is Michel Venn. I have worked previously with the World Heritage Center at UNESCO, specifically focused on the Asia-Pacific region. I've also briefly worked in the field at UNESCO Dakar, very briefly. But those 2 experiences, plus the teaching experiences that I've had in teaching about the World Heritage Committee, teaching about heritage management planning, and larger organizational planning, the World Heritage Committee, its convention texts, and all of these documents are something that I had to know very, very thoroughly, not only for my own work, but also for my teaching responsibilities. As a result, this video is heavy. It's a very, very long video. And so I understand if it will get a little bit overwhelming. So while I would recommend watching from the start, we do have timestamps in the navigation for this video. We have it in the comments. Additionally, I will put on screen, probably right here somewhere, the agenda for this particular video.
World Heritage is a shorthand term for the physical locations which are recognized as World Heritage. The World Heritage Committee is a group that recognizes what place are World Heritage and make a list to track these places. The list of World Heritage Site exists only because of the 1972 Convention concerning the protection of the world's natural and cultural heritage, more simply known as the World Heritage Convention. Basically, once a site is recognized as World Heritage by the World Heritage Committee, it is added to the list of World Heritage.
The World Heritage List seems to be the list which shows the best of the best, the list of the most important sites of the world, almost like a touristic guide. However, this list is a little bit more complex than this, and we'll cover this in a little bit more detail later, but the main point of the list is It is supposed to highlight sites which are considered to be important for the entire world and have something special. That something special being called Outstanding Universal Value, or OUV.
The value may not be obvious when looking at a site, but the World Heritage List does a great job of justifying why these places matter.
Now, that does not mean that any given heritage site that is on the World Heritage List is more or less important than the heritage that you have in your own backyard or that is important to you. For example, the very important religious place of Mecca, this is not a World Heritage Site. My local library is not a World Heritage Site, but both of these are examples of having different types of value for different audiences and different people that are still significant and important.
The list can be found on the World Heritage website and is updated regularly. Many countries also keep their list updated and publicly available on their own websites. So, what are the rules to World Heritage? World Heritage has 5 sets of rules and regulations put together in a document called the Basic Text of the World Heritage Convention. They state what the point of World Heritage is, how sites are nominated, how meetings will be run, the monetary aspects of the money of running World Heritage Committee meetings, as well as guidance on how these sites should be run. These 5 sets of rules are the following. There's the 1972 Convention concerning the protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage, which is the World Heritage Convention. The rules of procedure of the General Assembly of State Parties to the Convention, etc., etc. The rules of procedure for the World Heritage Committee, financial regulations for the World Heritage Fund, and operational guidelines for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention.
So, I would argue, though, that of the 5 different rules and regulations and convention texts there are, the most important of these 5 texts would be the World Heritage Convention itself. Without this document, the World Heritage Convention, World Heritage as an idea that is pursued nowadays, would not exist. In 1972, UNESCO, or the United Nations Education, Science, and Culture Organization, proposed the World Heritage Convention. In another video, we can cover how UNESCO functions and the difference between declarations, recommendations, conventions, and why UNESCO decided to choose a convention in this particular case. But what you need to know at this point in time is that a convention is the highest standard of agreement for countries that are taking part in the activities of UNESCO and also most other international organizations.
When a country agrees to the idea of a convention, they can ratify. Basically, they agree to the idea and they accept the conditions of the convention. To activate the convention, UNESCO requires a minimum number of participants. In this case, it would be 40 countries or state parties before the convention can enter into force or basically start functioning.
The more countries that sign and agree to this convention, ratify it, the more powerful or legitimate the document gets. Think about it like the Hulk, okay? The Hulk, to become the Hulk, is Bruce Banner. To become Bruce Banner, he has to get angry enough to turn into the Hulk, right? So it's that minimum level of anger that he needs to reach. And then after that, the more angry that he gets, the more powerful that he gets. It's a strange connection here, but right, keep in mind, right, they need a minimum number of participants to actually participate in the convention, which is 40, and therefore, if they have reached that 40, any number above that then strengthens the convention because more people are joining and more people make it more powerful.
When a country joins, they are considered a state party to the convention, or a state party, basically a member of the World Heritage Convention. Remember this because state party is a term that we'll use throughout the video.
The convention tells us a lot of things. Most importantly, it gives us basic definitions, who's in charge and who's responsible, where the money comes from, and what everybody involved in World Heritage can do. These details are listed in the convention as essentially bullet points, but the convention calls them articles. So these are articles of the convention. Each article covers one specific idea and is very easily searchable using Control Find, Control F. We're accessible using a PDF reader. Additionally, there's also a preamble at the beginning of the convention text, which justifies why this particular convention was important in 1972 and is still important, as well as some of the rationale behind its creation. The preamble has a lot of information for us to start already. The quick version of the preamble is the following bullet points. Cultural and natural heritage is under threat. Disappearance of heritage is harmful. Protection of heritage at a national level is incomplete because of the resources, whether it be financial or otherwise. UNESCO commits to maintaining, increasing, and diffusing knowledge by assuring the conservation and protection of the world's heritage. There are already international conventions which express similar ideas. There are places of outstanding interest and should be protected as World Heritage. The international community should participate in the protection of these outstanding sites without replacing the responsibility of a given country to protect their own sites. And a convention is needed to officialize these ideas.
Now we need a definition of what this World Heritage is. Well, conveniently in the convention, they start off with Articles 1 and 2 of the convention, which state directly what the definitions of cultural heritage and natural heritage that this convention uses. For the purpose of this convention, the following shall be considered as cultural heritage: monuments, architectural works, works of monumental sculpture and painting, elements or structures of an archaeological nature, inscriptions, cave dwellings, and combinations of features which are of outstanding universal value from the point of view of history, art, or science, groups of buildings, groups of separate or connecting buildings, which, because of their architecture, their homogeneity, or their place in the landscape, are of outstanding universal value from the point of view of history, art, or science. Sites, works of man, or the combined works of nature and man, and areas, including archaeological sites, which are of outstanding universal value from the historic, aesthetic, ethnological, or anthropological point of view. Then, for Article 2, for the purpose of this convention, the following shall be considered as natural heritage: natural features consisting of physical and biological formations or groups of such formations, which are of outstanding universal value from an aesthetic or scientific point of view; geological or physiographical formations, and precise delineated areas which constitute the habitat of threatened species of animals and plants of outstanding universal value from the point of view of science or conservation; natural sites or precisely delineated natural areas of outstanding universal value from the point of view of science, conservation, or natural beauty.
As you might be able to tell, these definitions focus very specifically on physical places. Other understandings of heritage that don't focus on physical places are found in other conventions, which we won't cover today. But the main takeaway is that according to this convention, they look at culture and natural heritage, which are considered of outstanding universal value. Now, if we continue a little ways to Article 3, Article 3 then tells us that the countries or the state parties should identify which properties in their territory fall under these definitions of Articles 1 and 2. Sorry, let me just move what we're reading here. There we go. So it's up for each state party to the convention to identify and delineate the different properties. And then if we continue to Articles 4 through 7, which cover the national and international protection of heritage, it basically tells us that it is the responsibility of the state parties to ensure effective and active measures for the protection of culture and heritage within their territories. This includes sites which are recognized as World Heritage. And so what we learn from this is that who is responsible for World Heritage? Well, in the end, it will always be the state parties to the convention that are responsible for the sites located on their territory.
Articles 8 through 14 of the World Heritage Convention covers the responsibilities of the World Heritage Committee. Now, without getting into too much detail, they have two jobs. Job number one, the World Heritage Committee manages the World Heritage List and the list of World Heritage in danger, including what comes on and off both of these lists. Job number two is to provide support through international assistance, which is a little bit further in Article 13. Basically, state parties which require assistance for conservation, preservation, or other needs for the protection of their sites can apply for international assistance, and the World Heritage Committee would review and approve or deny these applications.
So there's a few details to unpack here. Number one is that obviously we now know that the World Heritage Committee has two responsibilities. It has, as just mentioned, the lists and international assistance. Now, we also should mention, in addition to this is the first time that we have heard anything about the World Heritage List. Now, again, because this video assumes that you already know something about the World Heritage List, we won't go into too much detail unless you would like a video to be done specifically on how to deal with these type of lists. But we know that the World Heritage Committee deals with the lists and international assistance. We also have the General Assembly. The General Assembly is a second meeting that happens every 2 years as opposed to every 1 year. And the General Assembly, basically their responsibility is very quick. They vote for the members of the committee. That's it. I'm summarizing, but the point is that the World Heritage Committee is the one that deals with the World Heritage List and the World Heritage matters more directly. The General Assembly basically makes sure that the committee members do their work. So there are two meetings that we now know about: the World Heritage Committee, the General Assembly, and we know that the World Heritage Committee has two responsibilities, which is the managing of these lists and international assistance. Again, as a very it's more complicated than this, but the very basics is these two responsibilities separate from the actual voting of members to the committee, which is, again, the responsibility of the General Assembly.
Ideally, when all of this happens, they are supported by organizations that will help the work of the committee. Specifically, the convention states that the UNESCO Director General would appoint a secretariat to coordinate the work of the World Heritage Committee and have the advisory bodies, IUCN, ICOMOS, and ICRAM, to assist in preparing documentation required for these meetings. A quick side note, IUCN, ICOMOS, and ICRAM are known as the advisory bodies as they are international non-governmental or international organizations that are explicitly named in the convention to advise the committee on their work. The World Heritage System then also has to be funded. So, where is the money in all of this? Well, the state parties that have signed up to the convention provide the money. Essentially, it's a participation fee. The World Heritage Fund, as described in Article 15 of the World Heritage Convention, is a trust fund which is made primarily of voluntary and compulsory or mandatory contributions from state parties to the convention. Other funding can be provided by state parties through national and private methods, not just through the World Heritage Fund, but the fund is specifically established to help support all of this work. Articles 19 through 26 in the World Heritage Convention deals with how international assistance or monetary support can be used, which, while interesting, is not necessarily a detailed part of today's video, but same for Articles 27 and 28. They focus on education and awareness raising, important things about the convention, but this video will be very, very long, so if you're interested, you're welcome to go take a look. Article 29 provides information that the state parties should report on their activities on the World Heritage system to the General Conference of UNESCO. The convention does not tell us specifically what activities they report on, so we will have to look at other documents later in the video today to answer this question. Same with the World Heritage Committee, though. They also have to report on their work, which again we will look at later. Finally, Articles 30 to 38 in the World Heritage Convention provide the conditions for the ratification or approval of the convention itself, how the convention enters into force or is activated, how to denounce the convention, and details on how to revise the convention if required. The convention at its core tells us overall who takes responsibility for what. We know that there is a World Heritage Committee which does two things. They manage the list of World Heritage and World Heritage in Danger. They also manage international assistance. We also know that the state parties, so those who have ratified, approved the convention, they are responsible for managing their heritage within their territories and participate in the convention as outlined in the articles. We know that there are supporting organizations as well, such as the Secretariat, which is also called the World Heritage Center, ICROM, IUCN, and ICOMOS. They all have their responsibilities to assist the committee with the work when requested.
We also know that the convention provides us with a definition of cultural and natural heritage, which is now 50 plus years old, and according to some, needs some type of an update. But before we get into these details, right, we also have to remember that World Heritage as this idea that combines cultural and natural heritage at the time in 1972 was functionally revolutionary and helped, at least in the international discourse, get these two combined together. But again, with all of the information provided in the articles of the convention, we don't necessarily know how everything functionally works. So we should now return back to the 5 reference documents that we started with and find in the basic text where we can get a little bit more information on how this system works.
Of the 5 documents, 2 are instructions on how to run meetings, rules of procedure for the General Conference of State Parties, and rules of procedure for the World Heritage Committee are, in short, the rules on how everybody should conduct themselves during these meetings, which includes who is allowed to speak, who can speak first, what topics can be discussed or debated. It also can include things like memberships, sessions, participations, setting schedules, how to conduct business, etc., etc. Additionally, the financial regulations of the World Heritage Fund, while also important, is only a few pages compared to a lot of the other documents, and it does detail how the fund functions, but for this video, we will not cover the financial regulations in whole. So, which document are we going to focus on a little bit more?
Well, I would argue that the second most important document for World Heritage in terms of its day-to-day operations is the operational guidelines.
290 paragraphs of over 100 pages. The operational guidelines are the details that the convention itself does not go into. The operational guidelines, unlike the convention, is updated regularly. Every single action taken by the World Heritage Committee, the Secretariat, the advisory bodies, or anyone who wishes to touch World Heritage will be affected by the operational guidelines in one way or another, as the details go into all of the different nuances of how the system works. To read through the entire operational guidelines in one video would be very, very challenging, but we can give a brief overview of section headers if you want to find things on your own.
Additionally, if there is a topic that you want to dive further into, for example, again, nominations, outstanding universal value, or other details of this, or if you just want us to read through the entire operational guidelines, we can do that, maybe to depending on how excited you are about this stuff, you can either put it on to keep yourself awake, or you can put on a video reading the operational guidelines to put yourself to sleep. But anyway, jokes aside, keep in mind that this video is recorded in 2026, basically as the World Heritage Committee in Busan, Korea has just begun, right? A few weeks before and the week it started. So the operational guidelines may change the next time that you see this video. The operational guidelines themselves are not static. The state parties to the convention, when they do things as part of the committee work, they can modify the operational guidelines as needed to and agreed on to better do their work or clarify the rules which are confusing or not required or update information. This is often done through the previous decisions that are made by the World Heritage Committee or the General Assembly, but anything that happens in the General Assembly is then reflected in the operational guidelines and then approved by the committee.
First, in the operational guidelines, is the introduction of acronyms, abbreviations, and major players in the World Heritage System, outlining responsibilities for each and, if needed, where to find further information, most of which we have already covered. Important information for us to highlight is paragraphs 17 and 18 in the operational guidelines, which provides us additional information on the responsibilities of the General Assembly of State Parties, which determines the percentage of contribution to the World Heritage Fund and elect members to the World Heritage Committee. So, again, if we have the World Heritage Committee, which is responsible for various lists and international assistance, the General Assembly is responsible for determining how much everybody should contribute or pay to the World Heritage Fund, and they are also charged with electing new members to the World Heritage Committee. Paragraph 24 provides us additional detail on what the World Heritage Committee's responsibilities are, which include the management of various lists and the distribution of international assistance, again, as mentioned, and any updates that happen with this regard would then be reflected in the operational guidelines. Additionally, the World Heritage Committee has the responsibility to review the effectiveness of the convention and how it functions.
Additionally, we're also provided with essentially a description of what are called the 5 C's, or the 5 strategic objectives of the World Heritage Convention, which are the following: credibility, conservation, capacity building, communication, and communities. More information is provided about the responsibilities of the Secretariat to the Convention as well, which is currently the UNESCO World Heritage Center at UNESCO.
The World Heritage Center does what an administrative assistant or secretary would do for any type of office, which is organize the meetings of the responsible people, in this case, the General Assembly of the Convention as well as the World Heritage Committee, implement and follow through with the decisions of these bodies.
Of the World Heritage Center to really express our gratitude and for your positive comments on the quality of the report and also on the work undertaken by the World Heritage Center.
Additionally, they check the work of nominations alongside the advisory bodies. They do coordination and study of activities for the balanced World Heritage List, balanced and credible World Heritage List, organize periodic reporting, coordinate and conduct reactive monitoring missions, coordinating international assistance, finding extra budgetary resources, assisting state parties in implementing committee programs and projects and promotion of World Heritage through communication with state parties, public and advisory bodies. Basically, the World Heritage Center kind of organizes everything. And according to many of the World Heritage Committee meetings, they continue to do so despite having less resources to do so.
The advisory bodies are also another set of important players in the World Heritage world. There are 3 which have been written into the convention: ICROM, ICOMOS, and IUCN. Each of these advisory bodies have a special role to play, but it can be summarized as the following. Natural heritage is IUCN, cultural heritage is ICOMOS, ICROM is training and capacity building. All help with the work of the convention in their areas of expertise, preparing documents for the World Heritage Committee, developing strategies for additional work in the convention, assisting with the assessing of conditions of World Heritage sites, and even evaluating potential inscriptions.
We will do another video on these organizations, ICOMOS, ICROM, IUCN, but for now, this should be enough to understand the basics. So we now continue to the World Heritage List. This section of the operational guidelines, which is titled World Heritage List, is about the core details on how a site gets on the World Heritage List. For the average person, this is the section of the guidelines that everybody seems to pay attention to because it seems like the most important thing to have is to be on the World Heritage List, and it must be good to be on the list, right? Well, again, I think for another video we can definitely go into the challenges of World Heritage overall, but for now, as written in the text, the World Heritage List is a very specific process that is gone through paragraphs 45 to 119, which provides the definitions, criteria, and assessment of what is called outstanding universal value, which of course we briefly covered in the Articles of the Convention.
At least most often, the most important information on a World Heritage site which justifies why it's worth being on the World Heritage List. Since today's video does not cover nominations or the list of criteria on how to nominate, if you would like a video on the subject, let me know in the comments. I can get into contact with people who do this work as a living and provide a shorter, more intense video on how this process works.
Paragraphs 120 and 168 bis provides the process of inscription to the World Heritage List, including the preparation, formatting, contents, evaluation process, as well as the applications for modifications of boundaries. Paragraphs 169 to 198 cover the monitoring processes as well as the function of the list of the World Heritage in danger. As part of this section on monitoring processes, the reactive monitoring process is basically the regular maintenance checks of World Heritage sites on the World Heritage List, which is one of the two ways that the World Heritage Convention tracks what is happening on the ground. As part of this work, the state parties prepare a State of Conservation report, which when they prepare this, it's sent to the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies, who then review it and then present the State of Conservation report to the committee for their recommendations, debates, and discussion.
Of particular note here is paragraphs 172 and 174 for those who work outside of this World Heritage system. And it's basically about information that you, the public, can share. The short version is that each state party is responsible for informing the World Heritage Committee of any new projects, interventions, major restorations that happen on a World Heritage site. So when this happens, so their responsibility is marked in paragraph 172. So any information that is then provided to the committee or the secretariat that is not provided by the state party itself. So let's say if I am reporting on a damaged property or site, I cannot do anything except for inform the World Heritage Center of this particular change, and then the World Heritage Center will communicate this to the state party to verify the information before it can be used. This means that if there's any issue with the site, an NGO, or really anyone for that matter, if they inform the World Heritage Center, they will have to talk to the state party and confirm this information, whether it's valid or not. The state party can then elect to comment on this information, or they can not review any of the information. It's up to the state party to do so. But basically, it means that any information that is not coming from the state party itself has to be validated or has to be checked by the state party before it can be used in any official documentation.
Paragraphs 199 to 210 focus on periodic reporting. In short, this is a survey which all state parties have to take. It's right. If we have reactive monitoring as one monitoring process, periodic reporting is another. Essentially, as one of the two methods of conservation monitoring for World Heritage overall, it understands how the convention is working not only for each of the sites, but also each of the state parties. Additionally, this is done in a 6-year cycle, which allows it to be relatively regular. And while I would say that periodic reporting again deserves a whole nother set of videos, and I think there are publicly available videos on this particular process, but there have been 3 now. I think we're in the 4th cycle. Yeah, so 4th cycle of periodic reporting is currently underway. But through this entire process, one of the most important things that happens is essentially a period of reflection, which looks at creation of publications and specific approaches for each of the regions that UNESCO covers, to then improve the World Heritage system in each of those regions. Again, it's a continuous monitoring process that allows them to check in at a little bit of a bigger scale than just a one-off check-in on a site to see how it's going.
Support for the World Heritage Convention is covered through paragraphs 211 to 222, which covers research, awareness raising, capacity building, and so on, which again deserves a deep dive on its own in a separate video.
And to quickly finish up the rest of the operational guidelines, again, without going into too much detail, 223 to 257 go through international assistance requests and how these processes work. Then 258 to 258. You can see that there's a lot of text here. 258 to 279 has a lot of details on how to use the World Heritage Emblem, which, again, this is one of the points that a lot of sites and a lot of places enjoy the use of the World Heritage Emblem to signify that the place is World Heritage, and this has all of the details related to this topic. Finally, the section starting from paragraph 280 to 290 covers how information on sites and the documentation that is gathered by the World Heritage Committee and the Secretariat, how essentially all of this information is available for state parties. Most of it is available online for you to access as well at this URL, which is https://whc.unesco.org/en/documents, or FR if you were looking for the documents in French. But in the end, right, the operational guidelines is an incredibly dense document which is full of information. However, it doesn't give any information on how the committee itself actually functions.
So, when the World Heritage Committee meets, they follow a specific set of meeting rules, which are called the Rules of Procedure. These rules cover one specific aspect of World Heritage, which is how state parties meet and make decisions. Referring back to the convention itself, we know that the committee has 2 responsibilities. Just the regular World Heritage list and the list of World Heritage in danger, and second is to manage international assistance. These 2 responsibilities happen during committee sessions, and the process and how it happens is detailed in the Rules of Procedure. These rules are updated regularly and, as of this video, have been amended 11 times. At this time, there are 52 rules that should be followed.
Rule 1 is very straightforward. Essentially, members of the World Heritage Committee are state parties to the World Heritage Convention that have been elected from the General Assembly to be part of the World Heritage Committee. The rules 2 through 4 cover the types of sessions a World Heritage Committee can have and that can take place, and how and when these meetings are called for, and the timings and locations for these meetings. The key section for this piece, this key takeaway, is that the meetings for the committee happen every year.
The person responsible for calling these meetings to happen is the chairperson of the committee, supported by the Director General of UNESCO. The Director General is required to inform the state members, the state parties to the convention, of the date, place, and agenda 60 days before a regular session and 30 days before an extraordinary or emergency session. This means every year we can expect a committee session to happen, and we also should know the date, time, and location and agenda of the meeting 60 days before the actual event happening. This is incredibly important for planning, since all of the people involved in the committee processes, advisory bodies, secretariat, state parties, it allows everybody to have solid deadlines and be able to set a standard for what is acceptable and what is not in terms of information provided and responded to.
Participants of the committee are covered under Rules 5 through 8 and cover roughly 4 categories of participants to the World Heritage Committee.
Of course, delegations are the teams that are supporting the people around the state parties to the convention. So there'll be one delegate to a member of the World Heritage Committee. This person will be the head representative, while the rest of their team can be supportive in terms of expertise, advice, or substitutions. The rules of procedure give some recommendations on who should be part of the delegation and provides support for countries who wish to bring delegations despite not having the resources to do so, but it's largely up to the delegations to figure out which teams they would like to send. The important note is that delegations are only for the state parties that are on the World Heritage Committee. The committee, as seen in the convention text, is comprised of only 21 of the members of the World Heritage Convention at a time. So if a state party is not a committee member, it is considered an observer state party. This same status applies to countries which are not state parties to the convention. So you have members of the World Heritage Committee, they are delegations. Then you have countries or state parties that are not part of the committee but would like to watch. These are observer state parties. And for those who haven't signed the convention yet, they can still come and observe as observer within the observer status. They also tell us that ICOMOS, IUCN, ICRAM, and other intergovernmental or non-governmental organizations approved by the General Assembly of state parties, so all of the state parties to the convention, with similar objectives to the convention, can attend the meetings in an advisory capacity, while individual consultations with private or public individuals is also possible on specific problems. For the average person, the selection of basically which is relevant to any independent person is paragraph 8, observers. While there is a possibility for state parties to if there's a possibility for state parties and non-state parties to come to the committee as observers, there is also another category which allows me personally to visit the committee at least in the 3 times in the past 5 years. The text reads, other international government and non-government organizations, permanent observer missions to UNESCO, and non-profit making institutions that have activities in the fields covered by the convention may be authorized by the committee to participate in the session of the committee as observers if they inform the committee 15 days prior. Basically, what does this mean?
Well, first, you as an individual cannot apply to be an observer at the World Heritage Committee. So you can't do a solo trip or a vacation trip to attend a World Heritage Committee as a solo participant, so to say. However, you can try and be part of a delegation or another country's representative and join their group. If you have some expertise, right, maybe they can bring you in. But, right, if you're not able to get access as part of a government group or another group, if you are part of an institution that is connected to the work of the committee, so that could be work in cultural or natural heritage, or work that is related to a World Heritage site that's near your location, or work affecting people who are in turn affected by World Heritage. There's a lot of examples of this. Your institution itself can sponsor your visit, so to say. So what you can do, for example, is your institution can write you a letter. It says, "Dear Mr. Venn, dear World Heritage Committee, Mr. Venn takes part in work that is related to the World Heritage Convention and one of the World Heritage sites. He wishes to observe for X or Y reasons and would like to participate as part of the committee." If your institution writes a message like this, they can send it to the World Heritage Center requesting observer status according to paragraph 8.3 of the Rules of Procedure of the World Heritage Committee. Right? After you provide that detail, they can then process your response and then officially approve you. So I think you have to send this 15 days before the World Heritage Committee actually happens. So you have to ask for observer status before, and then hopefully you hope that the application will be approved, and it only gets approved during the first day of the World Heritage Committee, where they accept all observers on their list. In any case, I would definitely recommend, if you're a researcher or if you're somebody who works in an academic institution and wants to take part in the World Heritage Committee, if you can't get access through your own government or through other means, you can apply for observer status through whichever institution that you are a part of and then attend.
The agenda for the World Heritage Committee has 3 potential phases: provisional, adoption, and amendments. The provisional agenda is set by the UNESCO Director General with the support of the advisory bodies, including all questions or requests made by state parties in the committee, or state parties not in the committee, decisions made from previous meetings, and from the Director General. At the start of each committee session, the committee adopts the agenda, basically voting and approving the general plan. During the committee, if there are 2/3 of members voting, agenda modifications are possible. It's important to note that the schedule itself is not the same as the agenda. The agenda are the points that have to be covered, but may not always happen in chronological order. This gets a little complicated when the session actually starts, since the agenda points can happen out of order. The Bureau is essentially the office that is then charged with setting the working schedule of the committee, coordinating the work of the committee, and the hours of work for the committee. Rules 12 through 16 provides guidance on how to form a bureau and who takes part. As the leadership of the World Heritage Committee session is undertaken by the chairperson, support by a team of 5 vice chair people as well, these positions are critical for the smooth operation of the committee session. The Bureau for the World Heritage Committee is elected at the previous World Heritage Committee session. For this year's committee in Busan, Korea, the 48th session, the Bureau, the chairperson and the vice chair persons, as well as the rapporteur, were all voted as the next Bureau in the 47th meeting, which was held in Paris.
The chairperson in particular has many abilities granted by the Rules of Procedure. A handful of the primary responsibilities that the chairperson has are going to show up on screen on this side, and that includes the following. It includes the chairperson shall open and close each plenary meeting of the committee. They shall direct the discussions, ensure observance to the rules of procedure, accord rights to speak, and put questions to the vote and announce decisions. They shall rule on points of order and, subject to the present rules, shall control the proceedings and the maintenance of order. They shall not vote, but may instruct other members of the delegation to vote on their behalf. Shall work with the assistance of the vice chairpersons at their discretion to anticipate and address potential contentious issues, including those issues that might happen out of session, and shall exercise all other functions given to him by the committee. Now, I would also point out that how closely a committee follows the rules of procedure is often associated with how well the chairperson understands the rules themselves. So some more tricky situations that have happened during committees in the past usually revolve around how rules of procedures are enacted, and especially after rules of procedure have switched, because of course rules of procedures are not fixed, they change from committee to committee. So, two additional points of information. Number one, if the chairperson has to attend any other function or event or meeting during the committee while the committee is actually running, they will call the next vice chairperson in English alphabetical order by state party name to come up and temporarily run the committee while the chairperson is out. So, for example, if we have, let's say, Belgium is running the committee and Croatia is the next English alphabetical order state party name in line, they will step up and take the committee, as opposed to Germany, who would be farther down the English alphabetical order. Additionally, as we're talking about decisions and the work of the committee, it should be important to note right now that the working languages of the World Heritage Committee are English and French. This is important to bring up now, since the Bureau also has a position called the rapporteur. The rapporteur is charged with checking if the Secretariat has been writing down all of the decisions and all of the discussions accurately during the actual committee session. The Secretariat does that specifically with a team of 4 people. This would be 2 typists and 2 Secretariat staff who know the topics, with 1 typist and 1 Secretariat staff working in English, while the other 2 working in French. I personally know at least 2 of the Secretariat staff who are currently working on this task specifically, and I know for a fact it's a very important job. Other members of the Secretariat are also working on uploading decisions almost instantly after they have been made, so that they're posted online and available for access to those who require them almost immediately, in addition to many, many other tasks, just to make sure that everything is published and ready and functional, so that they can say that the committee has actually been proceeding properly. But with all of that said, let's get back to the rules of procedure. Conduct of business. Conduct of business is covered over paragraphs 17 through 34 and makes up the bulk of how the committee functions when everything is running smoothly. As we've been showing in the video, we have been trying to give you the best flowchart as possible to show you how things function. But in the end, what we want to demonstrate is, for example, in the details of the committee, how who is responsible for giving what permissions, right? So this includes who gets to speak when, how proposals are considered, and eventually how decisions are made.
To start, we should actually set the scenario to understand better what is happening. Each committee session is built off of a previous session, and each decision impacts another committee down the line. All updates, decisions, revisions, or changes that happen affect future meetings. So, as the committee members or the 21 state parties charged with running the committee start a committee session, they are seeing months and years of cumulative work summarized and prepared by the World Heritage Center. This includes proposals for new inscriptions, status updates on sites already on the World Heritage List, progress made on objectives, strategic objectives of the convention, and any and all tasks which the committee has decided are important. The advisory bodies, in particular, help prepare the drafts for decisions for particularly inscriptions and reviews of status of conservation reports, which state parties submit to the World Heritage Center. When all of the drafts are prepared, the committee members should review the documents and should be prepared for the meeting as such.
To actually begin a World Heritage Committee meeting, the committee itself needs to reach the minimum number of participants, which is called quorum, and all meetings of the committee must have quorum to actually functionally work. The meetings of the committee are also made public unless there are exceptional circumstances. So, in the regular working day of a committee, once the minimum number, the quorum, has been reached, they can begin their work. Now, not all of the work that is done for the committee is done exclusively in these sessions. For any topics that deal that need to be dealt with separately. For example, the performance of the World Heritage Committee or the conduct of the committee's work. Consultative bodies and subsidiary bodies that are set up by the World Heritage Committee can be organized as essentially official side meetings to the regular working session of the World Heritage Committee to discuss topics that are set by the committee itself.
Rule 22 of the Rules of Procedure then covers how everybody should take turns speaking. The chair of the committee is charged with providing the order in which speaking happens and can limit the time each person can speak.
Now I give the floor to the estimate delegate of Rwanda and followed by the Mexico. Rwanda, you have the floor.
Additionally, the chairperson can call on the World Heritage Center or the advisory bodies prior to a final decision or discussion. This is commonly done to have a public record on the point of views of the advisory bodies or the secretariat, or to have clarity on the decisions in front of the committee. So,
if you think you can speak at a committee meeting, technically the answer is yes, but only if the chairperson gives you prior approval. This applies to all observers of the committee as well, but often for smooth operations of the committee, comments and statements made by observers tend to not happen until the discussions on that particular topic are over, and they are asking for any additional comments post the decision being made.
State parties, if the topic of a discussion is about a site that is within their territory, they're not allowed to speak on the item unless specifically asked by the chairperson and only in response to specific questions. Additionally, state parties, even if they're not members of the committee at the time, can also be called on for clarification or updates on the site in question. Otherwise, what we mentioned before applies. They can only answer specific questions and only if they are called upon. The committee members also decide to accept draft decisions prepared by the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies, or, if they wish, can make changes and amend proposals as part of the regular discussion and preparation process. So, again, if the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies prepares the bulk of the drafts that the committee will consider, they can either accept the draft decisions as prepared by these two bodies, or they can make changes and amendments. So any new amendments or proposals that need to be put forward need to be reviewed by the entire committee.
This means that before the committee will consider any new document or any revision to any document or any new proposal, there's a requirement for 24 hours. 24 hours, they need to submit this new proposal or this new draft amendment 24 hours before it's considered by the committee. This gives enough time for the rapporteur and the team that is supporting the rapporteur from the committee to actually do the required work to translate and prepare the documents in a committee appropriate way so that it can then be presented to the committee for the committee's consideration. So let's break it down a little bit. So first off, let me see if I can just pull up on the screen here. There. So if we have the World Heritage Committee, the committee receives a number of documents from the advisory bodies and the World Heritage Center. Those can be a number of different types of documents, but let's assume that they get a nomination for a site. The nomination for a site, advisory bodies, World Heritage Center prepares. Then they will give this draft, which is a draft nomination for a site. They will give it to the 21 committee members for their review. The 21 committee members, let's say one of the committee members or two of the committee members have suggestions or changes. So they will send this information to the World Heritage Center and say, we have some changes, which again needs to happen before 24 hours, before 24 hours when the item will be reviewed. Okay, viewed, there we go. So any changes, drafts, amendments, etc., committee members will send to the World Heritage Center. The World Heritage Center and the rapporteur will then work together on this, and then they will send it back to the committee for the committee's review.
If the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies have prepared a draft decision which has a line that says, "Make my grandmother's house World Heritage." During the discussions, we can have 3 fictitious countries, Barovia, Wakanda, and Atlantis, right? They have all proposed changes to the draft decision to make my grandmother's house World Heritage. So the fictitious country of Barovia adds the line, make Michelle's grandparents' house World Heritage. So and they would essentially modify it so that we would remove grandmother and write grandparents. The fictitious country of Wakanda suggests that make Michelle's grandparents' mansion into a site which is recognized as heritage for humanity, so expanding a little bit, giving more detail. And then Atlantis suggests do not make Michelle's grandmother's house World Heritage. So let's imagine that there is a discussion around these proposals. They have submitted these changes 24 hours beforehand. The discussion then closes after everybody has done their debates, and then the chairperson will examine the different suggestions for proposals and decide which of the proposals is furthest from the content of the original text, and they will consider it in order of how distant it is. So in the case of the above, the suggestion from Atlantis is the furthest, since they do not want my grandmother's house as World Heritage. And since it's the furthest, it is voted on the first. So they will decide, do we accept this change? And if we accept this change, then all of the other changes are not as relevant anymore, because we have decided that the one that is furthest is the one that we agree on. But if we, for example, vote and it does not, this particular change does not hold, we then go to the next one, which is the now the most furthest from the original text.
Finally, for conduct of business, if a state party thinks that there is a procedural issue, for example, if somebody is breaking the rules of procedure or something similar, there are different forms of halting and clarifying business during the committee session. The first and the one that's used the most frequently, though not that frequently, is raising a point of order, which immediately pauses the meeting to address whichever point is being raised by the state party. Now, there are also other reasons for stopping the meeting, right? These include suspension of the meeting, adjournment of the meeting, adjournment of the debate under question, and closure of the debate under question. Now, the differences between all of these. Now, let's put it this way: the halting a committee or stopping the committee to adjourn, so to suspend the meeting or adjourn the meeting, usually happens if there is a need to stop whatever is being discussed on a specific item. Adjournment is basically the closure, but set to a new date. Suspension is temporarily. And then closure of the debate is total closure, like the debate is done without any real discussion. Now, most of these actions anyway, if not decided by the chairperson under the powers that are given. Otherwise, most decisions that are happening in the committee are done via vote. So every committee member has one vote, and all decisions, with a few exceptions, should be done with a 2/3 majority present and voting, meaning a state party which is present and voting means that they're voting, right? They're able to vote, and their vote counts for something. If the state party is present and not voting, this is not counted as a state party who is present and voting. Now, again, we're speeding through all of these details, but what we need to, and there's also nuances to voting and whatnot, but the most important thing about voting is that it can also happen via secret ballot.
The secretariat to the committee, which was already covered briefly in the operational guidelines, is the World Heritage Center and is covered in Rule 43. Appointed by the UNESCO Director General, they have the responsibility, alongside the advisory bodies, to prepare the documentation for the World Heritage Committee. This includes all draft proposals and draft decisions, which the committee reviews. The Secretariat also participates in all meetings and sub-meetings, but does not have the right to vote on any issues and perform any other duties. And performs all of the other duties. Rules 44 through 49 cover the documents prepared for the committee. As mentioned prior, the official working languages are English and French, meaning the documents must be available in both languages when reviewed by the committee. Additionally, spoken interventions during the committee must be in English or in French unless arrangements are made to have translation in another language, which means that often Chinese, Russian, Arabic, and Spanish simultaneous translation on site is available, but usually only during nominations.
All of the documents, draft decisions, and other preparation that needs to be done are all drafted 6 weeks before the committee in both English and French. Records of all decisions that happen during a particular session and the summary records are all prepared in line with all of the instructions that the convention provides, as well as the operational guidelines. Basically, it's to ensure that both the General Assembly of State Parties knows what happens in each session, and also for every committee to keep track of the decisions that were made at each committee, and keeping track of that huge record, and understand what is expected or what is required for the session that will come in the next year. Finally, if the committee actually wants to change any of the rules of procedure or temporarily suspend them, which suspensions are marked in the rules of procedure to know the last time that these changes happened, they can do so according to rules 50 to 52, again with a 2/3 majority support. The real fun with the rules of procedures is to see when the actual committee session happens, if the committee is following the rules, or if any state parties or other observers or advisory bodies are attempting to bend the rules to their advantage.
So, dense but lots of information. What then is the responsibilities that happen during the committee? Well, in short, the chairperson is generally charged with guiding the work of the committee. The Director General, Secretariat, and advisory bodies prepare the draft documents and agenda for review by the committee. The 21 committee members then debate and decide on all proposals that have been listed as part of the agenda, which the agenda usually has to be adopted. Then the rest of the decisions are discussed and adopted. In the end, the committee is the one that is charged with deciding everything in the end, often via 2/3 majority.
So I'm also going to save us a lot of time here and basically say that the rules of procedure for the General Assembly is essentially, it's the same format as the rules of procedure for the World Heritage Committee, with the following key differences that are important just for us today. First off is that all state parties to the convention can participate and vote in the General Assembly, while 21 state parties can participate in the World Heritage Committee. Observers are a little bit more restrictive. While, for example, you and I can apply as an NGO or an organization related to the work of the committee, General Assembly does not have the same type of flexibility. The working languages of the General Assembly is Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish, unlike the working languages of the committee, which are in English and French. However, summary records are provided in English and French. Additionally, Rule 33 explains the process for a state party to be elected to the World Heritage Committee that are part of the rules of procedure for the General Assembly. The main points that we can summarize here are that there are 21 seats for the World Heritage Committee that are divided across 7 groups that are based on UNESCO electoral groups, which basically tries to, as best as possible, balance out the representation on the committee geographically for a term of 6 years. However, it's mentioned in a handful of places in various texts, in the basic text, that it's recommended to reduce this voluntarily to 4 as opposed to a term year of 6. So again, we come back to this idea that the responsibility for anything involving World Heritage or the World Heritage Convention, etc., all of it falls on the responsibility of the state parties who have signed to the convention. So if the state parties are the ones who are essentially in charge, and the advisory bodies, they provide draft recommendations, they provide their points of views in their expert manner. The Secretariat does their best to follow what the committee has set as the rules and guidelines for World Heritage. Through the operational guidelines, through the rules of procedure. So we get finally to the question then, if the state parties are the ones responsible, how can you participate in all of this process?
Well, the World Heritage System has a lot of challenges and successes over the years. It is far from a perfect system, and we can cover a lot more of these topics if you're interested. Make sure to like and subscribe and tell us what you actually want to hear. We can actually reach out to people who work directly on this type of work. And again, as an active listener, your average listener can participate in the World Heritage System in a number of ways. First of all, as an individual, you can reach out to your local government site manager or responsible persons to ask how you can help and participate. You can, of course, contact the World Heritage Center with any concerns or challenges you might see at a World Heritage site. However, their response might be very underwhelming for you. They will respond according to paragraph 174 of the operational guideline, which basically will say that the World Heritage Center will confirm receiving this information, and that they will then confirm with the state party in question, and basically to check with them if the information that you have provided is accurate and true. In short, UNESCO and the Secretariat cannot really do anything more with your information except communicate it. Also, don't forget, UNESCO does not have a responsibility to manage the site directly. The Secretariat does not have a responsibility to manage the site. The committee doesn't even have this responsibility. It's the state party itself that is responsible for the sites. Now, other ways to get involved, you can, of course, contact your national commission to UNESCO or your UNESCO delegation that is charged with the work of UNESCO World Heritage cultural work. You can also contact specifically the people in charge of the site that you're concerned about. These are often the more direct routes in contacting those who are connected with the World Heritage System. Otherwise, if you're not necessarily feeling heard, you can participate in the World Heritage Committee as an observer delegation, which is to say an institution which seeks to observe the committee, as we've already detailed in the rules of procedure earlier. There are a number of NGOs that usually have the capacity to speak their minds at the committee on a given item, but usually that's limited to 2 to 3 minutes, but they can do so if they're given a chance to speak by the chairperson. So if you're in an institution or a university which does work similar to the work of conservation, heritage, culture, etc., you can potentially get support from your institution to apply and be an observer to the committee.
And of course, to affect change where you live, you should put your voice where it's heard. So for some, that can be for voting, for those who can make decisions in the direction that you think is important. For others, it's speaking to those authorities who are in charge, who take sole responsibility of the work. But in the end, that's this massive, very long video on World Heritage. You probably should now have a grasp on how World Heritage functions on paper. It's a little bit more than just the sites themselves. And there's a lot of details that were missed, a lot of things that were not delved into. But still, now you understand that it's again the responsibility of those state parties to help promote, preserve, protect World Heritage, and the way we can do that, while smaller, at least within the text of the convention, it can make a very big impact when you are on site. So from this video, we can make a lot of shorter videos. We can focus on specific sections of the World Heritage Convention. It could be nominations, it could be management plans, it could be outstanding universal value, it could be the advisory bodies. We can go in which direction we would like, and I think at some point we'll probably pick a direction. We can also do other conventions that deal not only with built cultural and the natural heritage. And I swear, for the extension videos, for the videos that will spin off of this one, I swear they will not be longer than 10 minutes, but any new conventions or any new processes and procedures, I think we will do another video like this. So again, if you liked this video, please make sure to let us know. If you didn't, please let us know so that we can also make changes in whatever direction we can better communicate this international level of culture and heritage, especially for those who are really trying to get into this space. That could be young, emerging professionals, those who are just trying to get into the space. But let us know what you want from us for our deep dives as well as our expansion videos. And with that, as always, we will now return your digital device to you. And as always, please stay informed.